welcome and a sincere thank you for coming out tonight and spending your evening with us. It's going to be an exciting and informative night of meeting and getting to know the three candidates running for Palmer Lake Board of Trustees in the upcoming special election on September the 9th. I am Sharon McVeigh, a longtime resident of the area, and I'm honored to facilitate this night of conversations with you and candidates Beth Harris, John Marble, and Roger Mosley. I'm a volunteer. I'm not a professional or a paid facilitator. I'm a nurse and just passionate about our community and what's going on and the future of our community. And I'm glad that you all showed up tonight. A bit about the order of the evening and the guidelines for questioning. First, each candidate is going to provide a 3-minute overview of who they are and what their vision is for protecting and providing for this little slice of heaven. Printed information is also on the literature table in the back that you can pick up and take home with you. Some of the candidates have a website that further details their campaign platform, so you can get information that way as well. Following their introduction, the floor will be open to you to ask questions. There will be someone circulating in the audience with a microphone. Yes, Karen is going to be circulating in the audience with a microphone. Please be sure to use the microphone so that you can be heard and receive answers to questions. The concept for tonight's meeting is an open question and answer session. This is not a debate. Questions should be no longer than 3 minutes, and please focus your questions on the town, related issues, and the candidates' campaign platforms. Questions regarding the candidate's religion or personal lives will not be taken. Once a question is asked, the candidates don't wish to respond may then do so. Candidates are given 3 minutes to provide their response. After they have provided their response, you may have a follow-up response that should be within the 3-minute guideline. And then they will provide further answers. And with that being said, if everyone can put their phone on silent or airplane mode, that would be great. And let's move on to hear statements from each candidate. Beth Harris, will you please begin?
Hi everyone, it's Sorry, I am Beth Harris, and thank you so much everybody for joining. I wanted to just do one quick game time announcement, so you have really timekeeping for questions and answers. Okay, I forgot to sort the timekeeper. In addition to being a candidate, I've also been, key in organizing this event, so I'm getting those last minute things done. So I'll start my introduction. So I am Beth Harris. I'm running for the Board of Trustees for the town of Palmer Lake. I adore this town, its community feel, and its magnificent natural surroundings and its traditions. More importantly than my admiration for Palmer Lake is my desire to serve its people and listen to their voices. That's why I'm asking for your vote in the September 9th special election. Why am I a good fit? I've spent many years working in big finance companies. I currently lead a team of 8 technical program managers who deliver and support technology to more than 40,000 users. I am responsible for organizing and delivering against my business unit's $50 million yearly budget, all within a globally recognized firm. At prior firms, I worked at a cryptocurrency startup and I managed mergers and acquisitions worth billions of dollars. Those experiences taught me to stay calm, focused, and results-driven, even in high-pressure, high-visibility scenarios with top executives from many teams, vendors, companies, and countries. Additionally, in the finance industry, where I've spent decades of my career, it's heavily regulated and very scrutinized, something in common with the public service role such as this one. But I don't just bring corporate experience and expertise, I bring community spirit as well. I help organize local events both here and in St. Louis, Missouri, such as the Festival on the 4th in 2022, and in St. Louis, the Festival of Nations, National Night Out, and Operation Brightside. Most recently, I've worked with Tri-Lakes neighbors, more than 20,000 of us, to bring our Tri-Lakes community together on the grassroots recall and ballot initiative petitions this year. This last experience has already led to my forming lasting and meaningful partnerships with around the Tri-Lakes community and beyond, as well as with its leadership. In short, I bring real-world leadership from managing large budgets to handling critical, high-visibility technology projects. I'm organized and level-headed with experience across corporate and local levels. I'm rooted in the community, helping create and deliver fun, safe, and impactful community events for all of us to enjoy. And if you'd like someone who combines professional strength and local dedication, who also listens to citizens' voices, I hope you will vote for me in the September 9th special election. Thank you.
Hi everybody, so for if you don't know me, my name is John Marvel. I promise you I'm not that interesting, so I'll keep it short. I'm a college student, I work at a gym. I've lived here for a couple of years, I lived in Denver before that. I'm not an outsider. And I have two jobs to accomplish here tonight. The first of those jobs being is I'm not going to get emotional. Who was a dean who lost the election because they had a weird scream? I'm not going to lose my credibility just over a few tears tonight. But my other job, and this is where you guys come in, is I want to hear what's going on in your lives. I want to hear what keeps you up at night. I want to hear what you're interested in, because that's what really interests me. I've seen a lot of really great things happen in the last couple of months here, the last couple of years even. And I've seen a lot of more younger people get involved, which it does get me emotional, because this is my future I'm fighting for. This is the future of so many others like me, hundreds of people like me. And it does get me choked up a little bit, because we need more people getting involved. We have so many amazing people in this town. We have intelligence, people who are skilled, with knowledgeable people, and they deserve to be here just like anybody else. So I welcome the chance to speak with you, and I deserve that. We all deserve a voice.
My first encounter with Palmer Lake was in 1965 when I hiked here as a cadet. And then I went off in the Air Force for 22 years and off into industry. And as soon as I could come back here in 1993, I was happy to come to Palmer Lake and buy a house. And we lived here for 25 years. And then we designed another house. And now we're down on 105, still in town. And we like that lot because we selected it to make sure we could still see the star. So I've been sort of involved in the town for a long time. My career, if you've seen any of my postings, has been very unusual and kind of lucky. I've done lots of important things and exciting things. I've managed a lot of people, a lot of money. I was the guy that President Reagan called when he was very concerned about the Cold War, and because I was building something that he really, really wanted. And I had to tell him over and over that we weren't sure we were going to be successful. But after 4 years, voila, we were successful, and I was very happy to have participated in a program like that. However, most of my background doesn't apply to town management. I mean, 500-pound bombs don't help you very much in managing a town. So please disregard most of that. Just take it on face value. I have done lots of project management, lots of money management, and lots of decision making that I think will be helpful for the town, and that's what I'm looking forward to. So with your support, I can do that. Now, as you know, I'm the trustee for transparency. One of my biggest irritations is that the trustees have kept things secret, particularly Buc-ee's, for 5 months. And I don't understand the rationale or the justification for that. And I want, from now on, I want the trustees to talk about why they're going to vote the way they're going to vote before they vote, because we've had very, very rare insight into that. I think the one time in 3 years was when Tim Caves talked about what his plans were for the Elk Rock Church. Now, whether you agree with the plans or not is fine. But the fact that he actually came out and said, here's what I want to do, here's my objective, here's how I'm going to get there, I thought, well, finally, a breath of fresh air, so I hope that continues. And that's going to be my focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. And we're open for the first question. And if you raise your hand, Karen will bring you the microphone. And this gentleman in front.
Thank you, each of you, for showing up tonight and introducing yourselves to us.
I think it's closer to the mouth.
He has a red light, is that back there?
No, it should be good. I'm coming.
Karen and
Is
Amy.
that good? Is that better?
Yes.
So I'll take notes until I go, and you can sort of start at that point, or keep going, however you want to. I just need to keep an eye on the time to try and get there. Give me your recorder so I can record my meeting.
Don't take Kelly Lauren. Running for these positions that are open, and wish you all the best of that. I'm going to ask a question and then ask each of you if you could respond to it, if that would be okay. So there's 3 parts to the question. And as a long-time, my wife and I, long-time residents of this area, these are things that are on our mind, especially in light of the recent situation concerning the trust and accountability of our trustees. But my first question to you is, what are your top priorities as trustees for the town of Palmer Lake? Number 1, what are your priorities? So if you could each address that, that would be awesome. Obviously, there's a lot of concerns, if you can, I'm going to give you 2 parts to this question. There are a lot of concerns that each of the residents of Palmer Lake have with respect to the future of the town. How do you plan on addressing the concerns of the residents of Palmer Lake moving forward? And then specifically, what are your plans to address trust and accountability in terms of how you interact with the residents and how to address their needs? Because I think this is something that clearly has been questioned over the last several months. So thank you again for being here. If you can address that for all of you, would like to go first, just address those 3 questions. That would be awesome. Thank you.
If I can keep them straight, I will. One of the big issues the town has is a physical issue, and that's stormwater drainage. And there was a suggestion a couple of years ago that we start a stormwater drainage enterprise. And the difficulty with that is trying to decide who benefits and who doesn't benefit. And in the end, Matt Proud was running that discussion along with Dawn. And it never got decided, but it still needs to be decided. I think the first step is High Street, and I think that's about $2 million. It's a pretty big step for the town. But we need to do something because there are a number of residences that are flooded every time we have a big rain. And I've never seen a map of where those exact houses are, and I would love to see that. But I think that's a big issue for the town because it's an issue for people and it's a monetary issue for the town. Now, the second part of the question, as I heard it, was how am I going to interact with the public? I think the amount of time it takes to do that is difficult. And I think a lot of the trustees are not bad people. I don't think they're resisting doing that. But when you get an 800-page package to review if you're on the planning commission, or you get even a 50 or 80-page package for the board of trustees, that's a lot of reading and study, okay? And they're volunteers, and they spend hours in those meetings, not just an hour or 2 in the board meeting, but in executive sessions. And so I have some sympathy. On the other hand, I think it's the duty of the trustee to understand what they're voting on, to read everything, and to try to be as informed as possible. Does that leave much time for you all? I don't think so. I think most of your interface is going to be in the meetings, but it's going to be because we're going to copy edits. We're going to start talking from the table to everybody and getting your feedback in the meetings. When I say I'm voting for this because of, I want to hear, do you agree with that? Or do you not agree with that? Okay? So that's my best way to get the interface. And the third part of your question was?
The third part was restoring trust and accountability among the trustees in relationship to the residents of the community.
I think the answer to the second question should answer that. That if you know why I voted for something, then you can say, okay, I understand the reasons, and I can either disagree or agree, but at least you'll know. Let me give you a really bad example. After the Buc-ee's thing had been secret for 5 months, they came here in April. In November, there was suddenly a BOT meeting that the trustees came out of the executive session. They came into the meeting and without discussion approved 3 contracts to study the Buc-ee's: financial, traffic, and what was the other one?
That's 3 minutes, Roger.
Okay. They voted on it with no discussion. That should have irritated everybody. Okay? And so if we have that interface from the table to you guys, hopefully that will help. I don't think it's going to cure everything, but it's a step in the right direction. Thanks.
All right, so I think luckily your 3 questions all kind of work themselves in with each other. So I'll try and answer them individually, but I think there is a bigger idea here. And the biggest thing for me is communication. That's my biggest priority. That's my biggest priority for the town. And the bigger part of that is, why are you doing this job if you don't love your community? If you don't love being in constant communication with the people around you? I know it's a volunteer position. I know you're not getting paid for it. But I'm doing this because I love it. I love my community. I love the people around it. And there needs to be a thorough line between the public and the people you represent. Because how can you represent somebody if you're not talking to them? We need to have more meetings. We need to have some sort of online way of communicating with our trustees that is, you might hear from them within a week. This is my first kind of foray into things, and you think that me getting involved would say, wow, people actually care about this. Anytime I've tried to do anything with the board, anytime I've gone through the town clerk, anything I've done anything through town, you're getting stonewalled. That can't happen. We're gonna have problems like water. We're gonna be facing major development for years. This isn't just a Buc-ee's thing. But people need to be educated. Sometimes it requires that we make hard decisions. Sometimes we have to cut things that we care about. But if people are communicated with it and not educated with, but if there's an understanding between representative and public, then we can really fix things going forward. We're lucky to have so many talented people who live here. We need to utilize that. We need to utilize the people who live here. And whether they agree with us or not, their voice deserves to be heard. They deserve to have a voice in the discussion. And we can face these things. We have problems, but if we don't want to turn out like casserole, we need to talk to the people who live around us.
So first, I want to thank you very much for that question, and I'm going to do a little plug. Some of the answers that you asked are actually on my website, bethharris.org. So if you want to look those up as well while we're chatting tonight and actually ask questions off of that, I would love that. So top priorities. So I go back to the town's master plan. This has been a refrain that I've sung for months, which is that the town is just not paying attention to this really well-researched, incredibly thoughtful, durable, as well as just incredibly stimulating and full of data report. I mean, it's just really impressive. There are the top priorities that are listed here on the community survey are conveniently pretty much my top priorities, which is, preserve the natural beauty of the area, preserve that small town atmosphere, have access to outdoor activities, and then the last one, which is really top 4, not top 3, safety and security. And within safety and security, in my mind, things that go hand in hand with safety and security are, emergency personnel like fire, police, and so on, as well as things like infrastructure that Roger mentioned, water management, and sewers, and all kinds of things that are having to do with infrastructure. I feel like fall kind of in that safety and security category. So those are my top 4 priorities. I'm very keen on that, and it's actually the basis for which on which I've based most of my arguments against like massive development that's not suitable for this area. The other question that you asked about, so concerns, how to address the concerns of the residents for now and in the future. So actually I have quite a few ideas about that. So in addition to, as Roger said, like meetings, board of trustee meetings being the primary interface through which people interact with the board of trustees, I agree with you that the format of the board of trustees meeting, if it can be changed, I would love to see for it to be changed, because it is not conducive to having an open dialogue like this one between townsfolk as well as the board of trustees. That is, to me, a travesty, because you have everybody, first of all, people won't show up if they don't feel like they're going to be heard, not going to be heard, right? So, for the people who are showing up, we need to have an open conversation. Like, they can't make a reasonable decision without having, as John said, like a pulse on what people think. So that's one area definitely I want to see an improvement on. The other thing John mentioned is also on my mind, which is how can we improve our online access, not only responsiveness to email questions that the board of trustees receive, but also, can we put in a system that actually allows us to have a Zoom meeting instead of having a one-way street that only puts out information of the live meetings, but doesn't actually allow for people to pop online and ask a question either verbally or over chat.
That's 3 minutes.
Sorry, okay. Short version is address trust and accountability. Also, I would like to see some of these same things used towards building that trust. Just the open communication, I think, is key. I have lots of other ideas, but I'm out of time.
Would you like to have a follow-up question?
No, that's good, thank you.
Okay, next person? Lady.
Good evening, thank you for being here. It's been proposed that the town has enough money, having just passed its largest budget ever. Do you think that the town has enough money in this budget, if it was spent properly, to serve the needs of the town in regards to improving public safety needs, fire, police, moving a master plan forward, such as sidewalks along 105? And if you don't think there's enough money in the town budget to manage properly, what ideas might you have to bring additional money into the town to service needs?
I'll go ahead and start since I have the microphone, and I know this, Roger's going to speak much more eloquently. I know this already. He's going to speak much more eloquently on this topic than I will. But yes, the town does have money to function. I mean, it's not as though the town is in dire straits. The issue that you mentioned, exactly the issue you mentioned, is what is at stake here, which is that we're just not managing it as well as we should. There's basically one big account that all the money goes into. That's not how budgets should go. You should at least have a separation of capitalized and operating expense budgets at a minimum. That's just a bare minimum. There's all kinds of regulations that apply to certain monies that the town gets that they have to very carefully manage. So to me, those are some glaring issues, like off the top of my head, that I can think of. And then you mentioned the concern about, things like sidewalks along 105. As I understand it, and people correct me if I'm wrong, if I have this wrong, but 105 being a state highway, the state doesn't allow you to put sidewalks immediately adjacent to Highway 105. There might be an opportunity elsewhere in the town to improve pedestrian access, and maybe some opportunity to partner with the state on finding a way, especially, I mean, personally, I go parade speed. I like to call it, I go parade speed through town, like 20 miles per hour maximum, just because there's people always crossing back and forth. That worries me, right? That's an accident waiting to happen, not to mention our wildlife cross back and forth. They're smart enough now, the deer will just watch and wait for traffic. That's super cute. Anyway, and the other thing you mentioned was like, okay, so how do we bring revenue to town? Another wonderful thing about this master plan is it has amazing ideas about how to bring revenue into town through business opportunities that are in keeping with the small town's character, as well as in keeping with people's desires for things like dark sky and those top 4 things that I mentioned earlier, such as maintaining our natural surroundings and so on. So I feel like there's certainly ways that towns can generate revenue without resorting to a big box store or a massive development. Did that answer your question? Yes. Mrs. Rogers?
Yes. How many of you are aware that I'm suing the town? Woo. just a second. I only mention that because it shows that I've been involved financially with the board for over 3 years, okay? That lawsuit was necessary because in September, we had our lawyer give the town a demand letter saying what we wanted to have fixed, things like how we accounted for money, what the money was spent on, how we made decisions on professional services. And by the way, in 4 years, professional service contracts has gone from 200,000 to 500,000. It seems like the town needs some outside opinion before they're willing to make a decision. And I think that's wrong. I think we need an administrator who has the confidence and experience to make certain civil decisions, okay? Maybe not everyone, but certain. So the financial rumor that the town is going broke or that the water system is going broke needs a little clarification. Right now, the water system shows on their balance sheet about $2.2 million in the bank. Now, they don't really have that because there are 3 loans outstanding. There's 2 loans from the state and 1 loan from the town, $500,000, which only started to be repaid last November. That was the first payment of that. So most of that money is actually obligated already. The issue is that if people tell you that Buc-ee's is going to come and that we're going to get $300,000 a year or $1 million a year or whatever they propose, and that's going to save the town, none of that money can be spent on the water system because it's tax money. And the water system is a Tabor enterprise, and you can't spend tax money on a Tabor enterprise. So it's not going to save the water system. Only your rates, your fees that you pay, the bill you pay every month will save the water system, okay? So now, how about the town? If we can get control of the professional services and start spending our grants on what the grant was for instead of what the town wants to spend it on. And, you know, we've had 3 years, we've only had 1 question for maybe the 50 errors that we have pointed out to the board. And that was Kevin Guerrero in 1 meeting said, do you see any evidence the money's being stolen? I'm not a forensic auditor, but I've been pretty deep into the money along with Marty. And no, we don't see any evidence of that. People are spending money on things that are good for the town, but they're the wrong things, okay? So we just need to get control of that. And I think we can go forward. We're not going broke. We're not flush. We're doing okay. Buc-ee's would be a great help to the town. The problem is we are not considering the impact it's having on people. And is it worth our moral and ethical stand to allow that to happen? And my vote is no. Sorry.
Bit of a difficult one to follow up on. I went to college for humanities instead of doing anything that was important. Yeah. How's that? Perfect. Instead of doing anything useful with my degree, I got a philosophy minor. I will never be the kind of numbers guy that Roger is, but I do know about people, and I do know the impact that having sacrifice or having to give up something for the good of the town. I know what it means. I know what it means to the people involved. We are going to make some hard cuts. We are going to make some hard decisions here. We are going to face challenges. We're facing development. We do have water problems. We have problems we have to face, but it's about educating the people involved. If it is your money going to pay for these things, if it is your time that goes to pay for it, you deserve to be listened to. You deserve to be heard. You deserve a voice in making the opinion. I'm in agreement with him. We have a great development project or a plan for a development project in the master plan, and it was an amazing piece of work that took hundreds of hours, and that's not going to be understated with me. But I do think we're going to have to make some development options here. But is the money being made worth losing the cultural homogeneity that we would see? I lived in Denver. I know what it means to bring in these big companies. And the buck doesn't stop at the Buc-ee's. That wasn't, no pun intended. But we can't put this back in the bottle. We have to vet these decisions properly. Everybody needs to say, here's what I think about these things. Here's what I'm voting for on these big developments. There's a way to bring it in and do it that does it right, does it ethically, does it without ripping off thousands of people.
I forgot to mention one thing. Marty and I have told the court that we don't want the damages, and the damages could be substantial, and we don't want them to be substantial. We just want them to be big enough to teach the board a lesson to say, behave yourself when you're spending money. We want any damages to go to a nonprofit, okay? So we're not in this for the money, which is pretty typical of this kind of lawsuit. And whatever you think of that, does that absolve us of feeling enmity toward the town? I hope so, because we don't. We just want the town to operate properly. That's our total objective. And I hope this works out for the town and for the board. I guess that's all I should say.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you. Would you like a follow-up question, or are you good with that? And the lady in front.
Hi, my name's Diane, and I live in the neighborhood here, but I'm curious how you would treat the dark sky problem with some of the buildings that have come into town.
I'll take that one. So one of the big reasons I got involved with the Buc-ee's fight, if you will, I live right looking down County Line Road, right on Academy Road over there. If Buc-ee's comes in, I will lose my dark sky. It is very important to me to keep the sky dark. Dark sky is not a commodity anymore. I remember I drove out to dark sky like zone to see a meteor shower, probably 4 or 5 years ago. I had to drive about 6 hours to get there. We're losing it quickly, and again, it's not something you put back in the bottle. There was the big railway storage buildings that got put over there on County Line Road by the train tracks, and it would ruin it. My neighbor Kathy here, she was on top of it, and thank you, Kathy. But it looked like a landed UFO as soon as I came in, and it ruins property value, it ruins the seclusion of the town, and I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to sit by and let our dark skies get ruined.
Beth sort of beat me to the punch about the master plan. I should have mentioned that right off the bat. It should be obvious that we all support the master plan. I think it ought to be stronger, that it ought to be more like code, okay? And when I was working on writing the master plan, was that 2.5 years ago, we emphasized dark skies in there. And I have several notices I've given the board and several demands I've made in meetings. What are we going to do about the lights? What are we going to do about those lights? Like Mission Training International was extremely offensive. They've gotten better, but they don't meet the standard yet, okay? And I think, just like John, it's extremely important. Small town, I want it to be like a small town, and I want the birds and moths to find their way in the daytime and to go to sleep at night and all that kind of stuff. And for people who want to take photography of the meteors, we need to support that also. But it's very important to me, and it is in the master plan. And I support it 100%.
Thanks for this question because it's near and dear to my heart. Excuse me. So I won't spend much time talking about the things that they already talked on, which is, yes, it's in the master plan and we should be paying attention to it. We also have municipal code that tells us what is acceptable in terms of lighting. We do have problems with that in town. I can hear it's the code. So I think this speaks to also just getting a little bit better on our code enforcement. I realize that we don't have a full-time code enforcement person, so that is something that we either will have to figure out if we want to do some budget to make that person full-time or how we address that. But there are also some other creative ways to address things like dark skies. So for example, there's Dark Skies International, which is an organization that certifies towns for dark sky, being dark sky areas, or certifies areas, so like Sand Dunes National Park is actually a dark sky area. So you can go through a certification process. Actually, Breckenridge just achieved this certification, I think, last week. So you can go through the certification process to make the town a dark sky destination. not only for preserving it from nature and so on, which is also very near and dear to my heart. Some of you probably know that I'm a wildlife and nature photographer on my side as a side gig, but also creating a tourist destination. How unique would Palmer Lake be if along the entire I-25 corridor we're a dark sky designated location? That's a tourist draw in and of itself. And it also, along with it, reinforces the habitat that allows us to have all these lovely animals. I mean, I get so many animals in my yard, it's just absolutely thrilling. A deer, bobcat, and coyote, and I don't want any of that to go away. Bear, everything, mountain lion. So I don't want any of that to go away. If any of you, I'm not going to plug my own photography website here, but if anybody wants to see me afterwards and find out what my photography website is, I'll be happy to share that with you so that you can go look at some of the photos I've taken right here in Palmer Lake. In fact, the vast majority of what I take is here in Palmer Lake. And I don't want to lose that. I was just out taking photos of the Perseid meteor shower a couple of weeks back, and you could see the glow from Monument and the glow from Castle Rock, and we're just this little island of dark, and it's already somewhat ruined, if I'm frank, but we could at least try to preserve what we have left and try to make ourselves a destination and stand out and be unique.
Good evening. Doesn't sound like it's on, but I guess it is. My question, I'm Gene Calesti. My question is master plan. What are we going to do to get it in an ordinance or into code? How are we going to come together with the other trustees? How will two of you join forces with the other boards of trustees to make this the law of the land?
I'll take a whack at answering that first. So, great question. So, obviously, like I think it's obvious, but I would very much like to put the guidance that's in this master plan weave it into our municipal code as much as I can. In terms of how to get there, certainly we could put it as a ballot issue and let the people decide, because as many of you know, one of the things I've been very keen on in my communications with all of you and thousands and hundreds of other people is that I'm for the people. I want to hear the voices. And if the board of trustees can't agree on putting municipal code putting the master plans guidance into municipal code, let the people decide. Let the people decide. Why not? So I think that's a valid route. If we don't want to go that route, then certainly I think it's going to have to be a point by point implementation. One of the things that also I see a problem with is related to this is the town's municipal code has some errors in it. Roger, I'm going to just credit Roger totally. I learned a lot from Roger in terms of how much erroneous information is inside of our code. So I think in the process of maybe doing a review of the code, we could also look at places where we can snap in the guidance of the master plan and make that part of our code, and then make the steps towards enforcement of the code. I think that's it for now. John?
You only have to write an ordinance to get it passed. That's all. Now, master plan sort of emphasizes small town, no tract development, dark skies. Okay, that's generally the feel of the master plan. The town has done significant damage to our code over the last about 5 years. What happened is we sort of had this pile of paper that we call the red line code, and the town administrator managed that. And I think in 2021, maybe 22, I think 21, we took that pile of red line paper and gave it to Unicode to digitize and to produce a clean version. When that happened, a lot of pieces of the code just disappeared without ordinance. We don't know where it went. We can't prove anybody in particular was responsible. But I'll give you one example. The old code said 2 checking accounts, one for water, one for the town. And now we have one. It's so easy to transfer money, commingle money, misuse money. And so we had a really good thing in the code 5 years ago, and now we don't have it. We can reverse that. If we have enough support for us to propose ordinances and to get this stuff back into the code, we can do that. And we should do that without the interference of this little company, this little nonprofit called CMI. And what they do is they go off and scrape code from other municipalities, bring it to us to give us like parking code that might be 50 pages. We are a little town. We can't enforce that. We can't even edit it, okay? And yet we have all this code, and it's been growing like topsy for the last couple of years. I am totally against it, but I am totally for you guys suggesting we would like this to be in the code and then fighting to get an ordinance to put it in the code. It's not that hard. It takes 2 BOT meetings, and bingo, if you can get the votes, you can do it.
I think we're all kind of in agreement up here. I think public vote is the way to go. If we could just do an ordinance, I think that's the way to do it. I have doubts that that will ever happen with some of the current members up there. But it is about communication, and it has been a very politicized document recently. The way that some of the current members talk about the master plan is that it's a big partisan, anti-Palmer Lake document. And I certainly think that if you showed it to anyone in town, anybody who's on any side of anything, they would find at least that they like most of it. There should be a public vote. There needs to be a discussion about this. Again, ordinance is the way to go if we can get it through the current board members, we really do need a public vote because the public deserves a vote. And I think it's something we would all agree on, even though they're going to try and tell you that it's not.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Duke. I've lived here about 25 years. And I'm going to record this because I know that I'm not the only one who wants to answer to this, and I might not remember everything you said.
Hold the mic right to your lips.
Right to my lips, is that better?
Oh, better.
Okay. If you get elected, and I'm not sure quite that I understand how the referendum is written or why it was written the way it is, but we have a chance, if we vote in, let's say, that we can all vote for all annexations, how does that actually impact? And then the flip side of it is if it doesn't get voted in, what is your strategy for preventing Truckees from being there at all, as opposed to the corporation going to El Paso County and drilling their own well and still being there, and therefore impacting all of the area in the same way? We don't want to, we're trying to prevent, I'm very much for them not being there, but I don't understand if this vote is going to solve that problem. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, let's talk about why Truckees is doing what they're doing. They tried to get Monument to serve them with water. Monument refused. They tried to get Woodmore Water District to serve them. They refused. They looked at their opportunity to be there on their own in unincorporated El Paso County. In order to do that, they would have had to get adjudicated water through the state. That is a very long process. Some people say you might be able to do it in a couple of years. Some people say it takes 5 years. It's a hard process. But in addition to that, by being on the town water system, they absolve themselves of risk. They put all the risk on the town. So let's say they were out there by themselves, they drilled a well, and it didn't produce very well. Or what if it did produce? Well, now they've got to have a water treatment system. They have to have a water professional manage that system because you're providing water to the public. It becomes a huge issue for them, and they don't want it. They want to put that burden on the town, okay? Now they're going to pay for it. And if they put $15 million into the water system, they can do that because it's not tax money. It's their money. They can pay to upgrade the water system. But as soon as it's upgraded and they hook up to it and tax money comes in, that can't go to the water system, okay? The problem is, for Buc-ee's, is risk, and they don't want it. And they're willing to pay millions of dollars to avoid that risk. And I think it's a danger to the town to accept that risk ourselves. Not just because they're using a lot of water. I mean, of course, everybody's worried about that. But little things like, what if the pipe breaks? What if one of our wells goes dry? Who gets priority on water? All those kinds of questions, which of course were avoided in all the studies. Why were they avoided? Because those studies were paid for by Buc-ee's and done by contractors that were hired by Buc-ee's, okay? Now that last little part, I might be exaggerating a little bit, but I believe that myself. And I think that's why we don't know what the risks are. We only know what the upside is. Oh, this is gonna be great. Sorry, it is not gonna be great. And I'm concerned about the risks we don't know about, okay? And I feel for the private property owners, they have every right to sell their property. But I think for us to bend the law as badly as we've bent it to get that flagpole annexation out there should make everybody question, are we actually following the real intent of the law? I don't think so. But to answer your question, I think it's because they don't want the risk. They want the town to take the risk.
So there were a couple things in your question I want to come back to, and I can't really improve upon Roger's answer, so I'm just going to leave what he said out there because I don't disagree with him, and I can't really improve on the way he phrased it. But there was another part of your question, which was like, how is the ballot and why? Like, it's actually, I should clarify, it's not a referendum, it's a ballot initiative to put something into town code about land annexation. So why is it phrased that way and so on? How will it work? I think this was the other part of your question, right? So the way it's phrased, and I don't have it off the top of my head, the language, it's online on the town's website, and of course it's in your ballots. But the way it was phrased is, should the town enter into municipal code the right for citizens, registered voters, to vote on land annexation decisions, and that would in turn take away the Board of Trustees' role in making decisions on land annexations. So there's that part, and there's actually a second piece of language that makes this, that item retroactive 1 year. So even if there's a decision on Buc-ee's, let's say today, which isn't happening, but let's say it were, let's say that land annexation decision were made today by the Board of Trustees, if we vote that in, this is very important for folks to understand, if we all vote that in our special election right now, we can reverse that decision, even though we have voted, like the vote won't be effective until September 9th. Even if the decision happened today on land annexation, we can reverse that because it happened within a year of when the ordinance, or sorry, the code was changed to allow land annexation decisions to be made by people instead of by Board of Trustees. And then one last point, the way it would work going forward is exactly this, like you would, as a citizen, be presented with a ballot and you would make the decision yourselves about whether to accept that land annexation. Does that answer your question about like how it works and how it's land worded this way?
Yeah, I think that was really helpful because I'm concerned in that, well, you've just said that, you know, if the Board of Trustees voted on Buc-ee's and they agreed to it, how would this ballot initiative change that?
Yeah, the retroactive clause, if you go back and look at your ballot, it lays out, it writes it, like articulates on the ballot exactly the language that would be entered into municipal code. And I believe it's I read it's the first or second part, but it does say it's retroactive 1 year from the time it's put into municipal code. And after the election takes place, there's only a certain period of time the town has to make that change to municipal code. We would still fall within that year retroactive clause, even if the decision were made today.
Similar to what you said, a bit of a hard one to follow up because I think we pretty much all agree on that. But I guess the point I'll focus on is that this gives people a voice. It gives them a chance to decide what they want for our town. I remember at my last house, a big outlet mall came in. Nobody wanted it there. Nobody wanted them to have control of the town. Nobody wanted them to say what was going to be there or what wasn't going to be there. But there wasn't any line of defense there. Having this gives us a chance to speak for what we want in our town, what we deserve in our town, and what we believe our town should look like for now and in the future. It's not just about Buc-ee's, it's about future developments, it's about future decisions that could impact us. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one more little point about the ballot. I posted around the room some QR codes as well as on the literature table that if you scan those, it points to my website, but it gives you a very detailed rundown of how to use that ballot, because I had actually folks tell my volunteers when we were canvassing on Saturday that they were confused by the ballot. So I wrote a very long, detailed post on how to do it, as well as recorded the video showing my ballot. I didn't vote on it. I didn't put my votes out there in the video, but if you just scan that QR code, you'll be able to review that on your own time as well.
Who's next? I'm not sure. Over here is who I saw.
Stand up here with us. Also want to thank Karen Stude for doing our facilitator.
And I may be misinformed because it seems like everybody here is really educated about a lot of subjects concerning the town right now. But I had heard that the board isn't allowed to do their own personal research on topics that they're presented to vote on. They're presented the issue and then they have to talk about it with the board of trustees and only vote on that. If that's truthful, how can the community trust the decisions that you guys are making behind your votes, that they're thoroughly researched and independently formed?
Okay, this is close to my heart. My wife was on the planning commission for a while, and she was instructed not to do any outside research. And this comes from the idea that when you have a quasi-judicial hearing, you can't bring in things that aren't part of the record, okay? The problem is that our previous town administrator was very secretive about things. And the board members and the commissioners only got to know what she wanted them to know. So you would get a packet and it would be pretty complete, but it was always what she and Crop wanted. What's the problem? The problem is because the law about quasi-judicial says everything that you vote on has to be part of the record. But you're authorized to send in a one-page document 3 days ahead to be included in the packet, and that becomes part of the record. And 5 minutes before you submitted that, it wasn't part of the record. As a trustee, you can discover something that's important. You can come to the meeting and you can say to the board to put it on the record, I just discovered that the contract for the PR firm is the brother-in-law of the mayor. Oh, now it's on the record and everybody can consider that and say, does that make a difference or does it not make a difference, okay? So this craziness that a trustee cannot do outside investigations or even stumble onto a piece of information that might be important and can't mention it is completely wrong. And it was self-serving. And the way it was self-serving is these meetings are painful and they're long, okay? You can't let everybody say what they want. But if you can control it well enough, you should be able to get all the information so that every trustee can actually vote on the whole picture, okay? And so I am 100% against this. Trustees can't do outside investigation. They're only required to then educate the whole board before they vote. And now it's on the record and you're completely legal. And I'm sure that that is going to be one of my first cat fights if you guys elect with Scott Crobb. Okay? I guarantee it.
Yeah, it's a pretty disgusting thing. When I first heard about that, I was blown away. This is what I study, this is what I do, and it's a very, I know Orwellian is a corny word. It is Orwellian, it's terrifying. How are we gonna have any trust in the officials who are supposed to make these decisions on us, supposed to be educated, if they can't even be educated themselves? Having a 100-page document thrown at you and having to decide on it a day later, how does that make any sense? This is something that has to change and immediately if we're going to have any sort of progress. We have very intelligent people around here. They're not given a chance to show that intelligence. I'm about as mad as Roger. I don't know if I'm that mad.
I would just add that I think, yes, there is an issue that we have to be very careful about with doing our own research. However, to Roger's point, if you enter it into the public record, it's legal. So the other thing that I want to bring up on this topic was, I love it when people from the town bring questions up to the board, because it forces them to consider things that they may not have considered before. And this is why, this is one of the reasons why I have repeatedly said I want to be the voice of the people, but I also need people to, talk to me and tell me what's on their minds and what questions they have, or, try to make myself available if I can to, after we receive the agenda for a given board trustee meeting, to talk to people beforehand so that I can understand what's on their mind after they've looked at it. Or if I can't make that happen, then bring it to the meeting and let's talk about it. Or submit in an email beforehand, let's talk about it. So yeah, there certainly are going to be times where even if I'm made board of trustee, I'm not going to know the whole picture. And I need your input as townspeople. One of the other things, back to the question about trust and restoring trust, one of the other ideas that I would like to try is an informal, what's called a pulse survey. So I don't know if it's legal yet, so just take it with a grain of salt. But it's just like one of the ideas I have in mind. A pulse survey is just one of those, those little 1 or 2 question surveys you get after you get a service or whatever. It's the same concept. Like, we put out the agenda and then, hey, pulse survey, everybody. What do you think about the stuff? Do you thumbs up, thumbs down, or you don't care? Like a Roman vote pulse survey. So like I have tons of ideas to help get at least some directional indication from people who don't want to sit through a 2-hour board of trustee meeting every 2 weeks about what they feel about topics. So there's lots of ideas I have to bring in those voices. But anyway, long story short, yes, I encourage people to bring their concerns and voice them to help supplement the information that we as trustees would get.
One little factoid you guys need factoid you need to be aware of. The trustees get their packet for the next Board of Trustees meeting on Friday, 6 days before the meeting. The public gets the packet, well, as you say, not always, but that's sort of been historically accurate. The public gets the packet one day, on Wednesday before the Thursday game. The Board of Trustees have accused Marty and I of coming in and asking them gotcha questions. And our response is, if we only get the packet the night before and we spend all day studying it and divining the questions, and then we go into the board meeting and ask them, and they think that we are torpedoing them, we are doing that because there is no opportunity to have a back and forth with the town because we don't see the packet. One of the things I want to change is that when the trustees get the packet, you get the packet. Okay? Now, I don't know how many of you are going to want to read the damn thing, but you get it, and we'll have that opportunity.
I'd just like to add one more thing real quick. Just just kind of off what you were saying, Beth, meetings are really hard. Nobody wants to go to meetings. You shouldn't have to live your life around town hall meetings. That's horrible. There should be an involved way to get informed. You should be able to go, say what your piece, and it shouldn't be an attack on whoever it is. And not that they are attacks, but they can be easily dismissed as attacks because of the defensive position that the boards put themselves in.
Side the table with the cap on the
Okay.
The microphone has to be up against your lips. Pretty much.
I think the mic's battery is dying as well, so.
Hi, my name is Glenn Howard. I'm over Glenway for 36 years. Been in the area for 36 years. First of all, thank you guys for doing this. Just a quick question for Beth. I'm thinking of state highways all over Colorado that go through towns and have sidewalks. So I'm not understanding that point that you made about sidewalks on 105 here. But my bigger question is about, I don't know. I mean, when I moved here 6 years ago, there was a quality of life in Palmer Lake, and I took it for granted, right? And it was shocking to me to see these things come up that just apparently can take it away. And I really appreciate the question about the master plan. I mean, isn't it great that people did this good work, but if it doesn't have teeth, right, it was discouraging. I went back and looked at the platforms of the candidates, our last mayor and the town board, and what they ran on. And yet, apparently, there was no mechanism to hold people accountable to what they ran on compared to what they were doing with the Buc-ee's thing. That was discouraging. So I think a major thing for you guys to think about going forward is how do we make sure that we don't just assume that this way of life, that everything that brought us here is going to continue, but we have to have a way to make things enforceable, right? The code, the ordinances, there has to be enforcement. There has to be a master plan that is followed, not because that they can just be set aside whenever we want to. That can't happen because there will always, I mean, suppose you guys get elected and then you go away, somebody else will run on a nice platform. This could all come back again in another way. Like, we need something that's going to guarantee this way of life for a future. So we need to address that. The other big thing, I think, is it was discouraging to me in the last 6 months to see our town staff apparently not being neutral on the question, but actually working against the interest of the residents of the town. Yes. We need to make sure that the people we're hiring on staff are in tune and on board with what we want from this town.
Woo!
Thank you so much for that question, and I'll be brief because Roger's chomping at the bit. On to the 105 sidewalks question, that's my understanding, but I could be wrong, so I'm not a traffic expert. I'm sure if I'm elected, I'll become more of a traffic expert. So excellent point, but definitely would look into it. Either way, like I agree with you, we need sidewalks or something, a more pedestrian-friendly area. Whether we can do that or not immediately adjacent to 105, definitely would look into it. And by the way, I want to point out that this sounds really like I'm patting myself on the back for something that should be sort of given, but you know, I'll admit when I make a mistake or I don't know. Like I have no problem with that. Like I work in technology. I don't know everything about technology. I can't possibly know everything about technology. And I love it when people tell me new information because that's just more stuff that I've learned. Anyway, so that aside. The other thing you were talking about was how to do that with master plan teeth. So you are absolutely right. It's a guidance, right? It's not code. So as we've discussed before, I think municipal code is the way to go. Code changes to reinforce the master plan's guidances. So I think we covered that a little bit in another question, so I'm not going to belabor that for too much. The other thing we mentioned was accountability. So the accountability piece is also very near and dear to my heart, and partly because I led the petition committee for the recalls. And that's a form of accountability. It's a very painful form of accountability because it has taken me, literally, it's like taking 6 months of my life to do that. And lots of other volunteers who have helped and people who are in this room who have helped on that. So that's one form of accountability. So most certainly you have that tool at your disposal, although I can't, it's like a 1 out of 10 as far as a good time is concerned. And then in terms of other accountability, I mean, yeah, hold us accountable. Like, I love that you went back and did that research. You know, and the other thing is, I just, you know, I've never done politics before. I've actually assiduously stayed out of it. But the reason why I decided to come into this process at all was because I felt compelled by a sense of civic duty and to exactly your point, like feeling that that I was disenfranchised, that my First Amendment rights were being violated, that open meeting laws were being violated. Like these are all the mechanisms. There are many mechanisms to hold people accountable for that. For example, there's 130-something plus attorney general complaints now for all these kinds of bad behaviors, some of them illegal. So there's a lot of mechanisms to use to, you know, all never simple, but actually the one that you're doing right now is coming to people and saying, how are you going to hold yourselves accountable? How are you going to hold these other people accountable? I mean, that's important. You need to get in people's faces and ask them these questions. So I can assure you, though, that I certainly would never, I cannot envision, or sort of like that, a time when I would be in favor of development that would go against the master plan. So I'll stop there.
How many of you participated in the TLCA? How many of you are aware of the fact that there was an attempt to file a lawsuit to force the TLCA to operate as a nonprofit? Okay? It was about 150 pages. I wrote it. I was furious about the TLCA back in 2020. I wrote a demand letter to the town to make Don Collins enforce the code and to keep that a non-residential property. Now, it's not that we couldn't have given Maddox some mercy, okay? But we had to make sure that it was clear that he wasn't the owner. But over 4 years, slowly, he got his nose under the tent and sold it, not as a nonprofit, but as a commercial building.
Our gift.
Now, what's that?
It was our gift to the town.
Yes. Now, I don't blame Maddox. Old guy, I'm sure, he was a criminal. I mean, I don't blame him for trying to take advantage of the town because the town refused to enforce the code that was on the books. And how we solved that problem, I don't know. Because I don't get to go shoot the people who aren't performing. I'd be wanting to do that, but I don't get to. Right? And so, demand letter aside, sometimes it's going to take some money and a lawyer and maybe a judge, but we have to buck up and do that. And so, I didn't get a lot of support for the TLCA. I don't blame anybody for that. It was very complicated. It was arguable. Were we doing the right thing? I understand all that. But the problem is, we need as a town to come together and say, if it's in the code, we have to support it. We can't just blow it off. And one thing that's going to make you really angry if you live in the town, in the code it says, if you don't keep your gutters clean, the town can clean them and charge you for it. Do we enforce that? Hell no. Do we have floods every time it rains? Hell yes. And why? Partly because we aren't maintaining our gutters. Well, I'm sorry, it's in the code, so there's going to be some downsides for everybody, but hopefully there's going to be some upsides also. Thank you.
So before we start arming the militia over here, there are some, we can get things codified, we can try and get things passed. It takes, we talked about it earlier, sometimes it takes an ordinance here or there. And that is something that we need to be done because the master plan should be codified. There should be ramifications, like actual enforceable ramifications. But I wanted to focus on one thing that you said, and I think you mentioned it, keeping people accountable is huge. That doesn't happen anymore. You don't go to Denver, you don't go to Springs, people aren't being held accountable. One of the reasons I got involved is because I've seen so many of my friends and neighbors get involved and get treated glib, dismissed, and I'm not going to stand up for that anymore. When I interviewed for Mayor Stern's old spot, I was questioned very heavily on my, I'll go back for a second. In my application letter, I said, I think that every board member has to be transparent as possible and should be forthcoming with their interests and their future plans. You may have, there's a reason you haven't seen my signs around. I'm a horrible campaigner. I'm not doing this to get a spot on a resume. I'm not trying to do this for some future job. I'm doing it because I care about the town. And that's the way it should be. That's why Beth is doing it. That's why Roger is doing it. It's because we care about our community and friends. And there should be ways to hold us accountable. And if I get elected and I do something horribly wrong, tell me about it. I want to know about these things. And there should be form of communication, form of representation, whether that be an online submission, whether that be something at town hall. We need to let people know that they're doing us wrong and they don't represent us.
Okay, yep, go right ahead. And I know the lady with the black shirt on the fourth row says.
Hello, you can hear me. My name is Steve Draper, and I'm a nice outsider. But I have a question for you three, just curious. Number one, do you realize that if someone wants to contact the planning commission, do you know how many emails there are to contact them? Beth?
One.
Just
One.
Roger?
I don't.
Well, you need to know, because the answer is indeed one. So that just goes to some of what we're talking about tonight, open communication. One person I think is very knowledgeable, you can't contact him, he doesn't have an email. But what I do see here is just, it's so a breath of fresh air to see you guys working together, which I don't see on the current board right now. You guys are so open, you're taking questions, and as we know, at last hearings, the last 4 or 5 that I've been to, it's like that gavel's coming down, it's going to be coming down hard. But this is just a specific question. Two of you have answered as being one of my emails. There's another BOT that actually responded. And there's a person whose name is, I think it's Jason Sanchez. Is he here tonight? No. Anyway, he came up with this cool, very, very, very scaled down version, nature-oriented solar thing of a buggies, and he did a whole drawing, and he put some time into it. And I actually sent the diagram to this one trustee, and that trustee answered, and I said, why not? Have you guys ever considered, scaling this thing down to like a normal size? In fact, Bucky's first gas station was a 4 or 6 pump gas station in Clinton, Texas, and it's still in operation today. So the question is, why can't they consider something like that way scaled down? It's kind of a negotiation, And Paula, you guys have all the cars. You have the water. And so my question is, hey, Bucky's, we're not going to have a 120 pump station. You're just not going to have it. But we'll consider something small. Would you all present that to Bucky's and not back down? This one trustee said, well, we asked But it was a hard no. And that's what that person's answer was. We asked, but it was a hard no. Would you all be strong enough to go up to a corporation like Buc-ee's and say, hey, this is your choice, take it or leave it?
Steve, the reason I don't know how many emails is because I have the private email of 4 of them, so I email them directly. 2 points about that. If this is Buc-ee's flagship, okay, and a lot of their new ones now are flagships, and they say hard no, the answer is 2 parts. No water, and we want all the taxes. We don't want to give you a third of it back, okay? And if you don't like that, go somewhere else. But it's obvious that the trustees are convinced that the financial benefit to the town is worth it, okay? Now, I don't know how you got convinced of that, because in several boards in a row now, I've asked them, if you get this money, what's your priority list? What are you going to spend the money on? Now, in the water system, there is a priority list. There are 3 priorities. The first one is fix the water pipe on the north end of the lake to get the water from the wells over the town in a better manner, okay? Because our storage tanks are over here and the wells are over there. The second priority is a thing called the loop. Now, some of the trustees and the town staff want the loop because it would allow for an annexation of that property that's down the southwest corner of Red Rock Branch Road and Highway 105, and to develop that, was it 50 acres, I think? Some of it you can't, it's a wetland, but anyway, to develop that area, and to allow potable water to be served to the Mission Training International Recovery Center. Okay, that's the second priority, and that's probably also within the scope of the town's work. The third priority is to get water to the east end. There's like 100 homes over there. They're on quarter acre, and every home has a well on the Dawson. And that should have been a water district, and it should have been on a deeper well, and it's not. We just made a very bad decision as a town to allow that, okay? And that's $4.5 million, and we're obviously not gonna get there. The third priority, just, sorry, it's out of our reach. I'm sorry we can't do that, okay? But anyway, give me the point of your question now.
Are you gonna say, hey?
Yes, absolutely. I want all the taxes, okay? And if you're not willing to do that, you don't get any water, see you later. End of story. Now, if they want to, I'm not going to ask them to build 100 pumps or 50 pumps. That's a business decision that they make. If they want 120 nozzles over there, and that's what they're pushing for, fine. They can live or die on that design. And if we don't like it, we just say no. And we haven't hurt ourselves at all. We're not throwing away money that we have because we don't have it yet. So we're not used to spending it yet, okay? So that's a very safe decision in my opinion. Thank you.
To your point, I think there's a very big lack of transparency within the board. My phone number's on everything. If you want to call me, that's more than welcome. I'll take that anytime. But I think it kind of goes to a point that we talked about to an earlier question. It's not that they're coming in to benefit us. It's not some godly gift that's going to come in and benefit us. They're trying to take control of our home. Whether that be in the maximum way that they want or in the minimum way that we can get, it's not a beneficial partnership because they're trying to take control of us. Eventually they're going to have a say in something. They're going to have something to say. And our negotiation was pretty poor. I think we didn't do enough vetting, we didn't do enough staying enough people. But I'm willing to die for this place. I love Palmer Lake, and so does everybody here.
So your question was, would I be willing to negotiate with Buc-ee's? So with the information that I have today, the answer is no. It's really to take it or leave it, like either yes, no. I know that's probably, it sounds a little bit simplistic, but But given, again, the people's voices as represented in the master plan, if I am a representative of the people, it's my job to represent the people's voices, which are, as I just said, expressed in the master plan. And that development goes 180 degrees to the opposite of what this master plan recommends. So, no. Can I, in general, negotiate? Yes. As I mentioned earlier, I worked in numerous technology companies. I was in a cryptocurrency startup. I've worked on merger and acquisition projects. I'm not negotiating the merger and acquisitions, but I certainly negotiated the terms of the project and the implementation of that merger and acquisition situation. So, which frequently comes with a whole raft of lawyers. So, yeah, definitely have no concern with making negotiations if that was part of what the intent of the question was. Any other thoughts on that? Questions, follow-ups? Yeah, thank you.
My name is Marcia Carteret, and I came in with one question for the evening, and it's now a different question. And the reason for that is, and Mr. Mosley, you started to answer the question. It seems as though the divide in people supporting Buc-ee's in this town and not supporting Buc-ee's in this town comes down to the idea that this town is broke. So I came in here expecting to ask a question about what are we going to do about the fact that the town is broke. But if I understand what the three of you are saying, the town is not in the dire financial circumstances that we hear it is in. So now my question becomes, we have all these people who are not here this evening, who are planning to vote in favor of Buc-ee's. They support Buc-ee's one way or another. And I hear this from plenty of people, and it's always down to the fact that we're broke and we need the money. So how has that narrative been spread that is getting people who will want Buc-ee's and support the board in bringing Buc-ee's in, if it's about money, that we're broke or we're not broke? What's the answer?
The answer is really simple. We built pickleball courts for $200,000. You think we're broke?
No.
We're not broke. Just tell them, how do you think we got a pickleball court? We have money, okay? We don't have a lot of money. It would have been great to build a tennis court and a basketball court. We did a pickleball court. So we are not broke. We're living within our means, but we're just not flush, okay? And that's an evidence right there, pickleball court.
I mean, I've looked at the budget, and I'm not as well read as Roger or Beth are, but we have money. We made the most money we've ever made. One of my neighbors said that we're going to have small developments and small upkeep, and that's normal. But we don't need to expand or anything. We have our own means here. I think a lot of the divide that you've seen, especially on social media, is conditioned narrative given out. It's really sad to see people trying to divide us when we're all neighbors here. I might have a neighbor next door who doesn't or is very vocal about wanting Buc-ee's, and they don't like me, they don't disagree with me, or they disagree with me. But if something unfortunate happened, they're the ones that I'm going to rely on, and they'd be there 100 times out of 100. There are really amazing people around here, and they're being swayed against their neighbors, against their friends, because of a gas station. Obviously, there's a discussion to be had, there's an argument to be had. If you want to have a discussion with your neighbors, go for it, because they're part of Palmer Lake, just like we are. But they're not outsiders trying to represent us. I will not stand by and let some outsider who doesn't even live in the state control what my town, my home is supposed to be like, and divide me and my friends. I think that is very scummy, and I think it goes a long way up. I think this is, if we sat down and talked to our neighbors, there would be less of such a divisive problem or such a hyper-extensive problem. It's part of politics. You pick a side, you're going to have stronger feelings about it. That's a psychological fact. But there's no reason that we need to give up on our neighbors like this.
So, Marcia, I want to go back to what you asked. You said, how do we counteract that narrative, right, about there? So, for folks here who are against Buc-ee's, I would strongly recommend that as much as energy sapping as it can be at times, to please go on social media and state your case to the opposite. Pickleball courts is a great example. That, you know, the town is not in dire financial straits. So really, the narrative, I don't know the origin of the narrative. If I had to guess, maybe it's from Buc-ee's, maybe, I don't know really the origin of the narrative. But the expression of it seems to be mostly on social media. So I would recommend, if you feel strongly about not having a Buc-ee's in your town and you see that narrative, contradict it. Put your voice out there. The other thing is, there is, very frankly speaking, in social media, there's a psychological effect on people of, if they see, say, 10 people who are like, for Buc-ee's, and only one person, responds to that, and that's the only person. Even if those 10 people are actually in the minority, and we see this in a much broader stage on our larger political picture, even if those people are actually in the minority, just because they're out there yapping it the most, and the most frequently, and the loudest, they turn the tide, okay? So for folks who are opposed to Buc-ee's, if you're on social media, say your piece, put it out there, even if it's a no, it doesn't have to be, some long, eloquent, Roger type articulation, but just something to, put the opposition out there, contradict it, do a little research. So for example, people will often use the jobs argument. If you go on to Glassdoor, which is a website that you can use to evaluate other companies and get reviews from people who've actually worked there. Glassdoor, if my memory serves, and this was maybe more than a month ago that I looked at the statistics, so just take it with a grain of salt. If you look it up, it's slightly different. It says that 70% of people who have worked at Buc-ee's and are still working there, because Glassdoor takes, not just people who takes reviews from people who have not only from people who have worked there before, but also people who are still actively working there. 70% of those people would not recommend working for Buc-ee's. I've seen complaints from the Johnstown Buc-ee's about, they only give us these just absolutely bare minimum breaks, and you get reprimanded, written up, with written reprimands, and you're a minute over on your break and all this kind of stuff. So it's a sweatshop, if I'm being frank, based on what I'm seeing from the Glassdoor reviews. So you could even do something like that, is the money worth that? And then the other question is, what happens after Buc-ee's? Because we've already heard about the fellow who owns the property in the area, the Greenland Ranch conserved area, and so on. He's already said that he might consider selling off his property, breaking up into parcels and selling it off so that more development can happen. Buc-ee's is just a door. That's just a door that's opening to a whole bunch of development that is going to cascade, and we're going to look like the rest of I-25 corridor. We're going to look like we're going to have Walmart and McDonald's and everything. And if all of you, are in agreement that the master plan represents your voices, then we need to be online and counteract contradicting those statements. Thank you.
I just want to temper my financial remarks with one thing. We have 2 recreational marijuana stores in town, and recreational marijuana tax receipts are going down. So it's not like we can just cruise into the future and think we're just going to be okay. We do have some issues, so don't think everything is totally rosy, but it's not terrible.
And you know what, I did not see, is there someone that raised their hand several times? The lady right behind you, Karen, that is nodding that she had raised her hand.
I think it's green sweater, and then it's going to be Miss Nancy, and then it's going to be up front. So.
And we're heading into the last 30 minutes, so make sure that you get your questions answered. And if I can happen to see you, make sure that you raise your hand high so that I can see, and we can make sure that you get your voice heard.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys hear me? I want all 3 of you. like naughty girl in the room and say something that is a little bit provocative, but I'm thinking beyond Buc-ee's, because they can piece out and like hit it. So how easily are each of you manipulated by power, shame, flattery, money, wanting to know secrets, guilt, and friendships?
I'll take this one. I'm in college. This is kind of my area of expertise. I've learned the horrors of peer pressure. I know what that means. But no, I believe it took me a long time to get my own strong values, my own perspectives on life, and I'm not going to throw that away just because somebody tells me. Without saying too much, there have been people that have tried to sway me and try to get me involved for other people. I've said no every time. It's not what I believe in. Roger and Beth are amazing role models. They've been amazing to me, amazing people. But we're doing this as equals. We're doing this as candidates because we believe it's the right thing to do. It's not out of the political game. It's because this is what our town needs at the moment. And hopefully that will continue.
Great question. I almost feel like you listed out like the 7 deadly sins there. So thank you for doing that. These are absolutely valid questions because, when I look at the current board of trustees, say one person, I have to wonder to myself, what is motivating people who are in volunteer positions to blatantly ignore townspeople's wishes, right? Over and over, repetitively. Blatantly ignore when people such as Roger and Marty bring up valid concerns with our budget that have far-reaching consequences. So it's a applaud your question because it's a good one. I will firstly start with corporate experience. So we talked about this earlier, that I work in financial services and I have been there for decades. I have had personally production access to financial accounts worth billions of dollars. Like, what I mean access is I can look at the data. I don't mean to say that I'm making transactions or something like that. But in terms of like having access to incredibly sensitive information worth a lot of money to people who would misuse it, right? I would never, have never, and will never break that trust. Not only is it the wrong thing to do ethically and morally, but also, of course, my career depends on it. But in general, like personally, like I would never want to, I can't even I can't even put words to it. Like it's just not in my nature to be bent ethically that way. And then the other thing is, it's sort of maybe a different way to answer the question, but I have a data-driven focus when I'm thinking about something. So we talked about being able to do research and things like that. I want that, and one of those data points is people's voices, right? So in general, just to recap or kind of summarize, my decisions are motivated by data and motivated by things like the town's master plan, motivated by people's voices, which is another data point. So I assemble all those things together, analyze them, ask questions, try to come up with the right path forward. So these are the things that drive my decision making. I don't get motivated by guilt. Of course, I take into consideration trusted advisors' opinions. But I certainly, if I have an overwhelming response from the town that says, we don't want this thing, like my personal canvassing, the statistics show me that 70% of the town doesn't want the Buc-ee's. If I presented with that data, and we did present that data to the board of trustees, wouldn't I think maybe I need to listen to that? That's 70%, that's massive. So anyway, long story short, I generally cannot be ethically compromised. And I also use data to make my decisions.
I know all the secrets I care about. I am a loner. I have no friends. I have my Airstreams. I have my kayaks. I have my computers. I have my spouse. I don't need anything else. Sorry, I really am a caveman. So nobody's going to influence me. Some of you may have heard the story, some may not. I was kicked out of the Air Force. It took the Air Force and the 4-star general who did it about 2 hours. That's unusually fast. I don't care. I told him what I told him and I stood by it. And he said, see you later. I told President Reagan, bad news quite often. And even though we were finally successful, and I'm an absolute crazy liberal, so I didn't like Reagan a whole lot, but I respected him for one thing. You could tell him bad news and he didn't fire me. He said, keep working. I thought that was terrific, okay? But I've got a long history of telling truth to power. Sometimes it didn't work so good, and sometimes it worked great. But I am happy, and that's what matters to me, okay? Because I've never had to compromise. So don't have any fear about that on my part. The fear you should have is, I don't make the right decision, okay? But I won't be unhappy with the decisions I make.
Let you know this, we have 21 minutes left. It looks like we have at least 4 questions out here. How do we want to handle this? Do we want to limit it?
The questions I got, like these last 4?
Down to 2 minutes. The candidates should just be 2 minutes now.
So you want to know the 2 minutes for
Yeah.
the candidate's response so that everyone can get their questions in?
Yes.
Okay, all right, well, let's do that.
Stop at these last 4.
Whoever you see out there, I know the gentleman up here has raised his hand and back here too. We'll make sure everyone gets a question.
Hi, I had 2 questions, so I'll make it one. Can you please try to very briefly educate me on the inner workings between the different committees? You have the planning committee, you have the BOTs, you have all these other, and this is in specific reference to the planning committee the other night, where they received an 844-page packet 5 days before the meeting, and nobody had read it. There were people up there reading it, and it was being pushed to be passed for the annexation desperately by the head of the committee and by Ducky's attorney. How can you work with them, or do you? Does the Board of Trustees then just take their recommendations? I just am not familiar with how that situation works.
I hope I get this right. So the Planning Commission takes in these plans, approves them, votes on them a certain way. It depends on how predominant their vote is, which depends on what the trustees have to do. For instance, if the Planning Commission turns something down, the trustees can still accept it with a supermajority vote, okay? So the one thing they can't do is the Planning Commission owns the master plan. And the master plan has to be written in accordance with now the PUD, or the PD area that Buckets will be in. I don't see any way that they can edit the master plan in a week and a half from now in order to have that conform so the trustees can then adopt this chapter 17 and all the stuff that's in there, including the Bucky's PD description, okay? There are some hurdles in there I just don't see are possible to come over. But the Planning Commission does have a responsibility for the master plan and for approving all these other things, which then the trustees adopt. But there's other committees. There's an Economic Development Committee. Now, they don't have a lot of power, but what they do is they take the load off the trustees by thinking up ways to attract businesses, okay? And one of the things that we've talked about tonight is sidewalks along 105 downtown, because a lot of businesses don't come to Palmer Lake because the downtown doesn't give them a storefront presence without the sidewalks and stuff like that. So there's some things we could do to encourage business, and I would hope that the Economic Development Committee would have a say in it and push that and make it successful. I can't think of other committees, I know there are. Oh, the parks, of course, yeah. And the parks, that's an established committee that actually does stuff. Okay.
2 minutes.
I'm sorry?
Do you communicate and all meet together and try to?
They bring their findings to the trustees for adoption, especially if it involves money. And that's the primary reason that the trustees get to manage them. And then, of course, we've got other departments, police, fire, roads, whatever. But the parks is a good one that I should have remembered because they've been working on Elephant Rock Church since I was 2 years old, I think.
Roger, you're out of time, but will you tell her about the Board of Adjustments? Board of Adjustments.
Board of Adjustments is another board which you go to if you want to have some kind of relief from like setbacks or building heights or other kind of building code things. And they make a recommendation, and usually what they recommend sticks. I mean, it comes in to the planning committee and then goes to the trustees and is adopted. But that's a little known group, not elected or appointed, okay, just like the economic development people. And it's a little convoluted if they turn something down that the trustees want to adopt it. And there are some complicated voting ways the trustees can still adopt something that has been refused by other committees, because the trustees have the power, okay, when it comes right down to it, if they're willing to vote 6-1 or 7-0.
Yeah, I know we're running out of time, so I'll defer.
Yeah. Say I'll defer so other people can ask questions.
I see.
I'm going to stay seated because it'll take me the 3 minutes to get up. But anyway, we came here in 1989, and the first building I walked into in our town was this building we're in now. And I deposited Aaron and Andy in 4th and 5th grade, and I started my teaching job here about 2 months later. And so the most amazing thing I saw outside my classroom window was a star lit at night, coming on around 4:45, because we stayed that late here, okay, as teachers. And it was a good sense of home, and I knew that we were home. And I wanted my boys to grow up in a small town like I did. And many of us here tonight and out there call Palmer Lake a home, and it's not just a physical building we live in. Okay? It is home of the heart, it's home of our spirit, and it's our way of life, and we want to keep that, as you know. But sitting here, and I see a sign over on the wall, and it says, the Think Box is a place to think about how to improve your behavior. I really want to take that. I took a picture. It's got to go to town hall and have the board look at it. Because if you are elected and the recall works, and you guys are elected to fill those spaces, you know as well as I do, it is a contentious board of trustees. And we can talk master plan and budget and everything else. But the pounding of that obnoxious gavel shows a lot how to improve behavior on a piece of wood. Now, how would you handle going into a contentious board like that? How would you handle going into executive session or sitting at the table as a new board trustee and going in that situation? Because you guys know it won't be easy.
Yep, I'll start.
Great question.
First and foremost, I'll do my best, right? I realize that I'm walking into a potentially contentious situation if I'm elected. I would very much also like to point out, please do recall both people so that 2 new people can be added to the board of trustees. This will help turn the tide on the contentiousness. It's still going to be a tough go. So in terms of dealing with the contentiousness, I think I would probably just have to come in and say, okay, we need to put the past in the past, and let's start working together from here, because I really don't know any other way to just like clear the decks. And other than that, I've worked in very contentious, like I mentioned before, like high visibility, high pressure situations, delivering technology solutions. And some people are not very nice. My general bar is that unless you personally attack me or my loved ones, I will listen to anything said pretty much any way and try to dig out the content of what people are saying in order to rephrase it back to them. Like, did I get that right? Like, you sound frustrated, but the thing I think I heard you say was this. Like, I have tons of facilitation skills for exactly this purpose. So these are some of the techniques I would use. I won't belabor it for, since we're going to do 2 minutes for it, but these are some of the things I would do. I have lots of training facilitation, so I can certainly bring that to the table. Thank you.
I like your point a lot. You can hear my mom laughing in the background. My parents were both teachers. The things like the pink box poster, they raised me. They have a big effect on me, and I think I turned out all right. I'm not a polemical person. I'm not trying to stir up drama. If I get elected, and that's not going to change. I'm a good Christian person, love thy neighbor. And even if you disagree with me, then that's fine. I still got you as a person and as a neighbor. But if somebody else wants, like, who's twice my age, wants to yell at me while they're on the board, then that's their prerogative. I'm not going to stop them from doing that. I just think they might need some time to think bucks. I think you're right.
For 4 times your age. My only solution to this hard problem is you have to convince the other trustees that you're respecting them and you're hearing them, even if you disagree with them, okay? And then you say what your position is, whether everybody else on the board disagrees with you or not. If you can do those 2 things, you can be effective without making an enemy of other people on the board.
I'm a native of Colorado Springs, and I've been a resident out here for over 50 years, my wife and I. And I've been to more board meetings and council and planning commission meetings and sanitation meetings than I care to remember. I served on sanitation for 10 years. I served on planning for 3 years. I went to 5 meetings a month for a decade. And one thing I can say is part of the reason, the way this filters down is the board and the mayor have been contentious since the middle 80s. Every board, every mayor, it's been contentious for so long. And it's kind of a shame that it is, because they're our neighbors too. What kind of happens is the culture comes down to, we do need a new fire station. We have more stormwater drainage issues than we can ever address. We will never have enough money to address all those stormwater drainage issues. We have water line issues. We have a town administration that's going to need a new building. We've had a lot of staff. So there's a lot of pressure on the town administrator to try to come up with revenue. You can take a large company like Buc-ee's, and the first contact for Buc-ee's or any business is going to be the administration offices. They take a look at a new business wanting to come into the area. They fill out the paperwork, and the town administrator is looking to increase revenue for the town because they feel responsible to try to bring this town along and improve the water lines, improve the fire department, the streets, the stormwater drainage. So there's a lot of pressure on the administration. So right away they're biased. They want to take the money that's coming in, regardless where it comes from. It does not matter. Believe me, it doesn't matter where the money comes from. And so they then pass down limited amount of information to the mayor and the town council Many times the mayor and the town council, particularly the mayor, and most of the town council members are usually either realtors or builders. And so they're all kind of tied into it as well. And that's the way the system goes. And this is going to be contentious for these candidates. I hope they get voted in. I know there's only room for 2, but they can sway. I believe, I'm optimistic, I believe they can convince some of the other board members to come on board and start looking at it in a different way. They can temper that contentiousness somewhat. One thing that might happen is if Buc-ee's is approved by the planning commission, and believe me, they can't possibly get through all the literature and understand in 2 weeks everything that goes into this. They can't do it. It's impossible. They'll probably rule on it, and it'll go to town council. I'm sorry, and I'll quickly move on. But if it goes through all these steps and Buc-ee's is approved, our neighbors that we're going to impact, both in Woodmore and Monument, will forever remember this.
You better believe it.
They will boycott Palmer Lake. Palmer Lake is dependent on our neighbors for their financial support. They will boycott. I would hate to own a business in Palmer Lake if it goes through, because they're struggling already. But if those businesses are boycotted, I think you're going to see buildings boarded up, because it's going to be impossible to attract new businesses to Palmer Lake if they're all boycotted. And those are just some observations I have. And the one thing I would ask the new board members to do is always come to your board meeting prepared and understand your codes. The codes that are there are put into place to protect us, most of them, against business. And it's the lighting, the signs, the speeds, all of those things are meant to protect us as citizens from businesses.
Thank you, Gary.
More point of come prepared and know your codes.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. We have a gentleman back here.
Karen, I'm going to respond just a little bit.
Oh, okay, go
You're
ahead.
absolutely right about the cost pressures, and they're frightening. And we do need to be sure that we have the income to support the town. Now, supporting the code is very important to me, because I agree with you. The number one reason for the code is to protect us, not to punish us, okay? And that's why we lost the TLCA, because we didn't enforce the code. That's why we have some drainage problems, because we're not enforcing the code. And I'm sorry that will impact all the citizens, or most of them, but we need to do that. And I take your point 100%, and I wish I had a magic wand to fix that. It's going to be difficult.
Last
Last
question.
Last question.
Mike Richards, 21 year resident.
Put the, it might not work, but
Mike,
try it.
to your mouth.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So first of all, Roger, I don't know if you guys know Roger is a war hero. Thank you for your service. Okay, I've been doing research on the water. In 1985, there were 1,200 wells, 12,000 wells, punched into the greater Denver aquifer. That includes the Dawson, the Arapahoe, and the Denver Basin. There are 2 other basins of water that are not, one's in Douglas County, we can't even touch it, and the other one, no, it doesn't really matter. The water is not good. It's deep and it's poisonous. Okay, so I just we as a town, we need to start preparing for the fact that there's going to be water issues. And I would like to ask the group here, why do we never have the water guys that are the most knowledgeable people about the water in this town are never at the meetings. And rumor that I hear is that they're banned from speaking.
Yes, they are.
And I would appreciate that if you guys would change that. They should be here if they want to be, if they don't want to be, pay them to be here when it involves water. Okay, so that's the number one. So the other questions I have, just real quick with you people answer, real easy, is do we pay Buc-ee's back for $1.4 million for drilling a well? Does that come back out of the tax revenue they're going to give us?
Theoretically, Buc-ee's put $15 million into the water system, and for 20 years, we pay them back 1/3 of the sales taxes. That won't quite cover the loan quote that we've gotten, but that's basically the arrangement, okay? And whether that's legal or not under Tabor, I think we're gonna have to ask that question, but for right now, that's sort of the agreement.
Okay, because the opinion I get all over the neighborhood is that Buc-ee's is giving it to us.
No.
A lot of people think that Buc-ee's is going to give us a well, free.
Well, they are providing the $15 million to build the 12-inch pipe all the way to them and drill a well and improve the water purification system. Yes, that's a loan to us that we're going to pay back for 20 years.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Okay, so the last question is, if we don't allow Buc-ee's to go in, and we tell them no, will Douglas County, or will Woodborough, or will some other entity go fine, come across the freeway and you put it there?
We've already talked about that. The reason is they won't accept the risk of having their own water system. And they would have to have their own well, and it would take them a minimum of 2 years, maybe 5 years to get that approved. And they're just not going there. Okay, we already know that. So I want to talk about the employees. Now, I came here tonight with a little speech, and I came here with a list of 14 reasons that the recall should succeed. And one of them is the trustees that we're trying to recall never spoke up and said anything about muzzling the employees. Most of the issues that I have listed here are not terrible things that Kevin has done or Sean has done. It's things they haven't done. They haven't done their duty. They haven't spoken up when Glant was texting terrible things in the middle of meetings. They didn't speak up. They didn't help our water employees who are against Buc-ee's and have important things to say, and those they were filtered out by Don and not Kevin, Dennis, okay? These are omissions of duty. Those are as terrible as committing bad acts, all right? And so, I would be glad to take 1 minute to do this. First of all, there's the IM lawsuit about the civil rights that we were denied. Suddenly, the 2-minute limit on public comments during that meeting. We'd all prepared nice little 3-minute speeches, 2 minutes, okay? Opening hearings with the required documents or studies on hand. Defying the recall position by appointing Dennis the mayor. Adoption of monthly financials despite serious errors. Adoption of 2 audits despite serious errors. Adoption of CMI approved code, which we don't need and can't even edit and can't enforce in the first place. Failure to object, as I said, to have an nurse texting. Failure to object to muzzling the water system. Attempting to muzzle my wife and myself in Board of Trustee meetings. Voting without discussion. An example is adopting the 3 contracts to study for Buc-ee's. Keeping Buc-ee's discussion secret for 5 months. Colluding during executive sessions. Failure to review the CROB contract after he admitted that they concealed the indictment of his son, which when he was convicted, got 13 years to life. That is not a light sentence, as you know. And so the recall doesn't depend just on being mistreated on December 12th in the eligibility hearing. It's a whole list of things that our trustees are doing and not doing that you should be incredibly angry about. And obviously, I am too. Thank you.
posted.
Okay, and then that way, yeah, it'll be more clear. And Beth asked me to ask one question that someone who could not attend tonight wanted to be asked. And it says, if elected, are you willing to work with the Monument Town Council in matters that would not only impact Palmer Lake and Monument, but also the region?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that. I will be brief because I know we're a little bit over time. So short answer, yes. I already work with the Tri-Lakes community. I already am in contact with Monument leadership. I've even spoken to people from Larkspur, partly to learn what they did towards our current situation with this crazy massive development idea. So yeah, I'm 100% on board with communicating and collaborating with people in the surrounding areas. We Tri-Lakes are not outsiders. As you pointed out earlier, the decisions we make here are not just little decisions that we can hold, to ourselves and think that we're not going to have an impact on somebody else. We need to be very mindful of that, and we need to respect our neighbors. So absolutely, 100%. I'll just to get some closing remarks. Just do visit betharris.org. I'll be there around for a few minutes afterwards, kind of cleaning up or whatever. So if you have questions, you want to chit chat with me and help me fold up tents, so to speak, I'll be happy to talk to you while we do that. And I also just want to say thank you to you, because you have been amazing. Like, we had more questions than I thought we would ever get. I am so thrilled and heartened by your engagement, and so relieved, frankly speaking, that I'm seeing this degree of engagement, and so grateful. And thank you, and please keep that going. And last but not least, to the volunteers, Karen, as she said, she's not a professional facilitator, she's a nurse, but she did a darn amazing job. So thank you to my fellow candidates, and thank you to all the other volunteers who helped out this evening.
So just to kind of add on to that a little bit, and you guys may want to say something, just remember September the 9th, you're going to be receiving a ballot. There are going to be 3 questions. It may be a little confusing, the language that's used in those questions, and we encourage you to vote yes, 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 and then select 2 candidates. I don't think that you're going to go wrong in any of these candidates, because they support the master plan, they support your your voice, and they want to listen to the constituents, and they support transparency. So I don't think you're going to go wrong. Just remember, yes, 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 September the 9th.
Please do us candidates a favor. Beth and I have yard signs, and I still have 6 more at home. So if you took all these yard signs and put them in strategic places that would make people angry, that would be wonderful.
I just want to say thank you for coming out tonight. This is pretty heartwarming to say. Whether you like me, dislike me, whatever. I have some information packets with my phone number back there. It's also on the Integrity Matters website. Reach out anytime. I will be happy to sit down and have lunch with you or whatever. But thank you again, volunteers, my fellow candidates. Thank you to all of you guys. This is really, really cool.
Back at the table, and stick around and ask the personal questions if you'd like to. Thank you for coming out.